welcome to the Showcase of Oshkosh. Glad you could join us today. My name is Tom Cannon, and I'm one of your hosts, along with...
Hey, I'm Bill Gillard. I'm an English professor at UWO. Really happy to be here today with Kate Penndorf, who's an author and who is an editor, author of the Frey series, which we're going to talk about today. Very happy to have her with us.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Yes.
Good. So tell us a little bit about yourself as a writer. Tell us about what you like to write, what you have written.
Okay, so I love fantasy, middle grade, and I really enjoy writing for that kid brain is what I call it, because kids have a different lens, they see things in a different way, and I love adventure, so I always wanted to be Indiana Jones. That didn't pan out. And so I kind of wrote that into my Frey series. So it's a little bit about a middle child syndrome, and she doesn't know where she fits into the family. And her dad is world-renowned, famous archaeologist. So that's my Indiana Jones tie-in. Yes.
Yeah. And she goes on adventures back in time, right?
Yes, to the Viking era. So tons of research. That's fun for me because I have a degree in writing, but a minor in history. So I love that idea of kind of weaving that into the storyline. So yeah.
So how does research fit into your writing of fiction? Because when you write fiction, I mean, Tom and I both write fiction. We know that the blank page is the invitation to do what you want. But you, as a writer of historically tinged fiction, have a responsibility to get at least some things true to how it was. So how do you navigate that?
So I think there's a fine line of respect that needs to take place. So my brother-in-law happens to be from Denmark, the country, not here in Wisconsin, and I got to go visit for their wedding, and I got to see some Viking graveyards, which were really cool to me because where we obviously maybe have a tombstone, if they didn't have a boat to put them on at sea and light a flame, then they would put them in kind of in an oval shape with boulders all around to look like a ship. And so I got to see that type of graveyard. So little things like that just stuck out to me, and that type of stuff you can't mess with. That is true to the culture. But when it comes to the mythology, that's where you can kind of bend some of it, if you will. So I didn't want to do what Marvel has already done because I figured they've done a very successful job at that. So there's no Thor and things like that in there. But I do have a character named Freya that is one of the goddesses, but that is not she, who I've written about. So yes, there are aspects where historically I need to say there were 9 realms. That is what the Vikings believed in, so I want to be respectful and have 9 realms in my story, but I can have a little flavor with some of my characters that maybe didn't exist then. Quick example is one of the friends that Frey goes back in time and meets is a boy named Eric, and he's a berserk. So that means when he wears his little bearskin jacket in battle, he's invincible. And I figured, well, he's got to have a way of not being invincible. So I tweaked that type of mythology, and if he's wearing it inside out, then it's just like a normal coat kind of thing. So yeah, so there's some fun, learning all of their rich history, learning all of the mythology, but then tweaking it.
And I think that's actually kind of important too. There's lots of people write fantasy, and to have it set out, you kind of have to have that different twist to it,
Right.
An approach that takes a different look at it and does look at different, not Thor the God, but
Right.
And then to do it through the middle schooler's eyes of your main character, Freya.
Yeah, absolutely.
And am I wrong also in the fact that I like the approach of the middle child, so instead of just Harry Potter where it's the poor orphan child that's
right,
suffering, it's more typical angst of being
Right.
a middle child.
Right. She's not the cutesy wootsy little one, and she's not the brain smart older one. So who is she?
Are you a middle child? Is
No,
that-
I'm the youngest.
Oh,
I'm the cutesy wootsy little one.
who could do no wrong?
Right.
So you're the reason why the middle child
Exists.
gets treated.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
You use the term kid brain. Is that
Yeah.
that's pretty fascinating, right? Because we're under pressure constantly to use our adult brain, you know, and to stay calm and solve problems and to be rational and reasonable and all that.
Yep.
How do you access those deeper kind of, you know, it's more selfish, more simpler, but more energetic, focused even, innocent. How do you access that and still remain a functioning, responsible adult?
Well, I have to act like an adult while thinking like. So I love kid brain. It's just something that I think I coined. If other people use it, bravo. It's a super fun thing to say. It can be really hard as an adult writing for children because you don't want that author intrusion. You don't want the, well, as a parent, here's how you know what I mean? Because clearly the kids wouldn't act like that in a story. And so you just have to get back into really the emotions of what childhood brought. So do you have some diaries you can go look at? Or if you think back to one of your favorite memories, I bet you it's linked to an emotion. Like, I was having fun with my friends. We were climbing a tree. And there's probably an avoidance of a consequence. You know, so I'm about to do a workshop and for Lakefly, and one of the things that I'm going to bring up, spoiler alert, is I had a pair of brand new shoes, and they were the coolest shoes, and I must have been in about 4th grade, and I wasn't supposed to wear them outside yet, but of course I did because I have kid brain, right? What could go wrong? And so while wearing them, I jumped off something outside and I twisted my ankle. So of course I had to go home to my mom. I'm not going to tell her what I did, right? I'm going to tell her I twisted my ankle because I was barefoot. Because that was the truth. And that's what kid brain does. Adult brain would be like, oh, I'm so silly. I knew those shoes would have hurt my ankle. I shouldn't have jumped off. You know, adult brain would reason, and kid brain will, lack of reason, try to get away. You know, I didn't want to get in trouble. So I didn't have the advocacy of my own life to rule. You know, I still had a parent who would say, I told you so. Yeah.
And you've visited schools. You brought your writing to schools, and you see how your writing reaches the kids in whose voice and in whose mind you're trying to be. How does that feel?
It's super, super interesting. Like huge aha moments. You know, I basically wrote a story where a little girl goes through a portal, goes back in time, and there's really no adults around to tell her, here's how to do things right. Does she meet adults? Yes, but she's really hanging out with kids her own age. So basically what's happened is it is an adventure away from home life. And when I would do writing exercises with a bunch of these students, without even telling them this is what you need to be writing, let's say, it would just be a prompt, like write about a friend. Almost all of their stories would turn around to be like, so we escaped, so we jumped out of the window. And I was like, why are all the kids this age leaving home? And then it dawned on me, they're at that pivotal point in their development, you know, mental development, of being able to figure out, I'm not a child, I'm not a little infant, I'm not a toddler, but I'm also not an adult. I don't have a license. I can't drive a car. I can't go earn money, you know, because I might be 10. Maybe I can babysit or maybe I can whatever.
But I do have a bike.
Yes, right. Yeah, and I can get out of here. Yeah, and so it's this feeling of I want a voice, and I don't know how to get that voice. So I have to leave to find that voice. Ooh. You know what I mean? So, yeah. So it was really exciting. And of course, it's like, did you all collaborate together? You all wrote the same type of story. But it's that age.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And Freya, in your story, how old is she? In
12.
12
yeah.
in the first novel.
Yeah.
Is that part of her struggle to find her voice?
Yes. If you would like to go into therapy with me right now, all of my books will be about a little child who tries to find their voice. So yes, as the middle child syndrome, she does not know how to fit in. Her dad, like I said, is world renowned. I mean, how do you fit into that? So she needs to prove herself to herself so that, she can gain the confidence to say, I finally know who I am in this family. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it, as a middle grade, it's kind of also written a little bit for the younger ones. Kind of do it where get the younger ones so they have something to look forward to.
Yeah.
So I also think that they're still kind of, even the kids are more sophisticated, they're still kind of close to that age where they can still imagine. I mean,
yeah,
going into another realm, jumping into it. I mean,
I
think kids have a lot of access to that creativity that
they do. Their ability to see a movie inside their own head is super cool. I went to a school one time and they kind of deconstructed the first opening pages. They made an image of it and I was like, well, you got what I was saying? Sometimes I feel like I'm stumbling over my words or it's fiction, like I see it in my head, but do you see it the same way? And it was really neat to be like, that is what I was trying to tell you. So yeah, I love that they can infer a little bit of reading between the lines so that they can guess and predict, because every really, really exciting book for a young kid, and maybe even the ones we read as adults, you want to predict what's going to happen. You want to engage in the story. You want to kind of play with the storyline. So I felt bad because some of their questions I couldn't answer because it's spoiler alerts for future books. But I was like, they got it. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you do a great job with the kind of the story arc and following through and keeping the focus on the character,
thank you.
which keeps readers engaged for sure. So that gets me to my next question, and I'm going to ask both of you this question actually. So you've kind of finished with that story arc in your first book, and it's got a beginning, middle, and end, and you feel good about it, and you send it out into the world, and then you write a sequel.
Yeah.
How does, and I said I'm going to ask this to both of you because Tom is in the late stages of writing a sequel to one of his novels, and that's the first sequel that he's written. He's written many books. Right. So how does that, I mean, and I've written stories and a couple of novels, and I know after a lot of work, I know how to end the story, and I know when it's over, because you resolve the conflict and the character, just transformed or whatever happens. But then, how do you crank it up again? How do you write a series?
And were you planning on doing the series right from the start?
Yeah. So obviously you have to write a standalone, right? Because you don't know if the rest of the books will get sold by a publisher, or if you're going to self-publish, then you have the control to say there will be more books. I wanted to go traditionally published, so that's what I started off with. And so when the book sold, I was really excited because it's like, yay, they get this. And I had a huge cliffhanger. And the acquisitions editor did say, I like it, but readers won't. Because this was the type of cliffhanger that you couldn't be answered. You couldn't sit down and be like, oh, I do think that Freya got what she wanted. It was more like, well, did she get what she wanted or did she not get? So it was kind of like, I don't know what to guess will happen next because it was too big of a cliffhanger. So I had to rewrite the ending. With that in mind, I write backwards. So there's 9 books in the series because there are 9 Viking realms, and spoiler alert, Freya has to go to all 9 realms.
So wait, that makes 81 total books,
right? Right. So I know the very last scene of book 9, and then it was kind of like, okay, how do I work back to that? So there were items and objects and even characters in book 1 that had to get cut and put into other books because it was information overload. Like, I can't keep track. Who's this character? Who's that? So yes, book 1 had to have a beginning, middle, and end, and it needed to have a wrap up with a plausible, is the bad guy really gone? So is the bad guy's action for this book gone? Yes, but that could just also be a launching pad for for proving what he's capable of doing. Like if he can do this in book 1, think of what he could. So yes, that got subsided, but he's going to come back and back and back and back. So yeah. And how about for yourself?
So tell us about yourself, Tom.
Well, you're working on that sequel.
Yes, I am. And, I never intended it to be, I wanted it to be, it was a standalone story. And you're done with it, once you're done with it, you're done with it. And I think a lot of times people that know it's going to be a series, you can kind of have like mini arcs and then an overall reaching arc. And I think in my way, I got lucky because you get older, So like the main
Speak for yourself.
much older. Yeah. Like my main character had his arc he was like about 25. He had something to learn, and now it's 20 years later, and he's had a lot. Now he has new problems, and I think I might have cheated a little bit too because he's the story is the Tao of Apathy. He has to kind of learn the Tao of Apathy, not caring at work, which is not as negative as it sounds. It's actually kind of, and then now he has to teach it to his niece about how to deal with the craziness of, working anywhere, really.
Yeah. I think we've all worked there.
Yeah, which it might kind of reminds me of one of my favorite book, which is Catch-22 by Joseph Heller, where he wrote a story about in World War II. I mean, it's world famous and it's intricate, and there's plots are weaving out.
And there are 21 prequels, of course.
Yes, the Yossarian, and Yossarian's this. And then towards the end, like 30, 40 years later, he wrote Closing Time, which is the sequel, and it's the main character is an old grumpy geezer, kind of like Joseph Heller himself.
Mm-hmm. You reminded me a little bit. I do a lot of work, scholarly work, and just pleasure on fellow Wisconsin author Robert Bloch. He wrote Psycho, upon which Alfred Hitchcock made the famous film. But Bloch, as a way to kind of challenge himself, and he was very prolific. He would write, he would publish like 4 or 5 short stories every month, in Weird Tales, pulp magazines like that. But he would hear a phrase like, "What's the matter, cat? Got your tongue?" Something like that. And he'd be like, "That's the last line of the story. How do I get there?" And he would write a story where actually, like, for some reason, the cat would like
get the tongue
in a horror kind of way.
Yeah.
And like, what? And you read the story and you get to the end and it is the punchline. You go, "Oh yeah, I get it," but it's horrifying by that point.
Yeah.
And so Bloch worked backward too. He would, and he said for many of his stories, he knew what that last page looked like.
Yeah.
And he had to figure out, the joy of it was trying to figure out how to get to that last page.
Yeah, I have fun with that too. So I am not a pantser. I'm definitely a plotter. But that's not to say while writing that I don't come up with things that I didn't see, when originally outlining it or whatever. But the best thing, of course, is finding notes that you didn't know you even came. I found something, so that little coat that I told you that, spin it around. Had this note not been in my handwriting, I would be under oath. That is not my idea. I don't know where that idea. That was my handwriting, and I was just going through all my notes like, I need some way for this character to not be immortal, because raise the stakes, right? Bad guy closes in, and he could kill you. And so, and in the note was, if the coat is taken too far away from Eric, he will start to suffocate. And I was like, that is brilliant. Me? I was like, yeah, exactly. Where did that come from? So.
Yeah, and I think that's a bit of a piece of advice too. As you're right, don't waste anything. Don't throw it away, because you may need it later and put it back in or use it for a different story.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, so how old do you see Freya aging?
So I told you she was 12 in the beginning, and my brain was like, maybe she started at 11, because it's been a long time since I started these books. She ages every book 1 year. That's the intention. So yeah.
Good.
So
yeah, I mean that's a natural way to do it, especially if you can stay, productive.
Stay the course. Yeah.
Because you're readers, coincidentally,
Age
are
too,
aging one year
exactly.
every year as well.
Well, at this point, it's more like decades.
Yeah.
I know.
The future reader.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the parents are going to be. I remember the story when she was 11.
Right.
And this might segue into, kind of projects you're working on now. So what are your tips? What advice would you give to writers in general or the middle school writer?
Adult writers or kid
Right.
writers?
Adults writing for middle schoolers
Okay.
or middle ages.
Yeah. I think that biggest thing is get out of your adult head. Yeah. Try to remember the fun. This is going to sound terrible. Try to remember the fun of life.
Impossible.
That's my big advice. Yeah, right. But I'm stealing this from other people, so I forget who said it first. But imagine this is our dinner table, right? And us three here are sitting high above it. We see our plate, our nice silverware, our nice goblets, whatever. Goblets. This is medieval. Yeah.
And our turkey leg.
Right.
It's our mutton leg.
Right. But you bring in a child, and just to kind of show it, a child's going to sit more like at this height.
You are our first guest to do this.
Oh, really?
That is amazing.
Okay, so everyone. And so a kid's not going to have a goblet or crystal. A kid is also really going to see the dog sitting underneath. They're going to wonder how to get those beans into the dog's mouth because they didn't want to have beans. A kid is going to interact with their world on quite literally a different level than an adult will. So, kids are really living in an adult's world, but they don't have the rules yet to play by adult rules. So, hence the fun. Yeah. Was that a tip or an advice? I don't know if I answered your question.
And I think it also has implications for all writers. It's what you're going to put in your scene has to be through the eyes of your main character.
Yeah.
So what does, that dinner table, what are they going to notice? What details are they going to notice, and how is that going to affect them?
Right.
The adult is annoyed the dog's under there.
Yeah.
The kid is thrilled.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And for me, thinking you're describing the kid mind there, for me it's about responsibility. I feel responsible for the table, for the goblets, I feel responsible for the child, for the dog, for the house.
Right.
For the world situation.
Right. Right.
I feel responsible in some way for a lot of it. And as a kid, I wasn't. I was remembering this. You made me think of it. I haven't thought about this in years, but I was in probably 7th grade, something like that. And there was this girl who lived a block away. I was living in New Jersey. Her name was Eileen. I walked home from school with her sometimes. She was like a goddess walking the earth. She was like so, I couldn't spend enough time with her. It was so great. And she had a younger brother, like a year or two younger, Tommy, and I was friends with him too. And one day I was coming home, I think it was from school, and there was like this wall of thorns on one corner. And I was walking up, there's something weird about the wall of thorns, and I'm walking up and is that somebody like inside the thorns? I'm walking up, it was Tommy, and his bike was like crashed on the curb, and he was like hanging like semi upside down in the thorns, like a bike crash, and he was there. And I was like, because I didn't walk home with Eileen that day, and I was wondering where she was, and I was thinking about it, so I walked up to say, hey, how you doing, Tommy? What's going on? And he was hanging upside down like a little blood, and he was like, nothing, what's up? And it's like, I don't know, where's your sister? It's like she's probably home. I don't know.
You're like,
and I'm like, well, tell her I said hello. Tell her I said hey, and he said all right, and I just went home.
And now retell that scene as an adult.
As an adult, I'm like, oh my God,
call 911.
Yeah, I'll cut you out. Don't move.
Right.
You're gonna be fine.
It'll make it worse.
I'll get the alcohol.
Yes.
No.
The iodine.
And I literally just walked. I went home because I figured Tommy's got this, And
he said he was fine.
Yeah.
And I didn't care about him.
Right. No.
Except as a conduit.
Yeah.
To Eileen.
Right. Right.
And so, getting into that mindset, like I can't, like it's vaguely embarrassing. And like, hi, Eileen, if
But-
you're watching.
But there's the emotion around it. You know what I mean? Like the adult emotion is the embarrassment, but the kid brain emotion was, I don't need you right now.
Exactly.
I'm moving on from here.
Yeah. And you're good.
Indifference.
And I have no responsibility
Right.
to help in any way.
Right. I'm too young to do it if I wanted to.
Right. I'm just a kid.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that kid brain, and how to access it. So it bubbled right up for me there.
Yeah.
This vaguely embarrassing story, but it's something that I did
Right.
as a kid.
And
I
I'm
wasn't
sure-
a horrible, maybe I'm still a horrible
I'm
person.
sure.
Am I a horrible person? Maybe I am.
That was last week.
Right. And I'm sure as an awkward consequence, had an adult found out that you were there and walked on, you would be now lying your way out of why you walked away. Otherwise, they'd be like, you shouldn't have done that to your friend. You're going to get in trouble, But you're probably like, oh, he said he needed help, so I was walking to get help. You know what I mean?
A lot,
You'd work your way out of a trouble.
But and I also think you kind of remember that, keep that in the back of your mind, and then when you come across a adult character that you want to write into your story that would actually do that,
Yeah.
why would they do that? What would be the situation?
Sure.
And that'd be a pretty striking. It's a story that you'd remember.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So speaking of working with writers, you are a developmental editor.
I am.
True or false?
Yeah. True. Yeah.
Are you or are you not? First
Kid
of all,
brain would say,
been.
right.
First of all, can you define that term for us? And second, talk about your experience and maybe the path to get to that point.
Yeah.
What is a developmental editor?
Well, thank you for asking.
You're very welcome.
So, a developmental
Have you talked to
editor.
Eileen lately?
She says hi.
Oh my God, she did? To me? Did she say my name?
So I'm the big picture thinker, if you will, for your entire story. I'm not going to line edit. I'm not going to look at your grammar. I'll see it, and if something is constantly annoying my eye, like you forget how to uppercase I for your name, let's
Spaces
call it.
between words, things
Forgot
like
a
that,
period. Otherwise, that currently makes no difference to your story. So I would be the type of first eyes on page for editors, and a line editor or a copy editor would be the last. What I'm looking for is story structure. Do you have a beginning, a middle, and an end? I'm going to look for consistencies. Like, did you say red hair before? That may not always matter to me. Sometimes that will go towards a copy editor. But if I'm noticing it was accidental, I'll just put in a, did you forget that this person had blonde hair? Because our stories change while we're writing them. But truly what I'm looking at is, does your story idea hold strongly for the amount of pages that you've written your book in? If it's a 300-page book, if it's a picture book and you've got, your X amount of your X amount of spreads, right? Yeah, that's a long picture book. So I'm really looking at, did you develop the character? Do you have plot points? Do you have your causes and effects? Even pacing. Has it been heightened for too long and it's time to let the reader breathe? Like, maybe now's a time for a reflection. Like, okay, I just got away from the police. Maybe now's the time to talk about how to rob the next bank and not keep running. So, yeah. So I kind of got into that because I worked with editors at the publishing house where Frey landed, and I really liked their insight. There were some editors where I was like, well, you're rude, because there's an art form. My job as an editor is to not put you or your ideas down. My job as an editor is to lift you up so you can make your story the best that it can be. So a really good editor kind of looks like a really good critique partner, where they're asking you questions and they can bring it back to craft. So whereas a beta reader is quite literally a reader. Like, I picked up this book and for the fun of reading it, where do I kind of zone out, right? But I'm not going to tell you, your pacing was off. As a reader, I'm just going to be like, sticky note, and that's where I put your book down. So you're up to fixing it. I'm not a book doctor, so I will never say to you, you really should make the guy really cute. You know, like I'm not going to tell you how to fix your book, but I could say things like, have you pondered what it would be like to have a hunk of a main character? Like, how would that change the course of your story? You know, is it a beauty pageant story and he's the ugliest person in the room and he wins? You know, like then it could be something of a twist or whatever. So my role is not to book doctor, rather to help you enhance what you've already got.
So what kind of writer should come to you and get that help?
You know, I'm really game for any writer. I know some editors are like, when your book is at this level or that level, and I get a lot of writers who are, they just don't know what level their book is at yet. They've gotten it as far as they can get it. So I kind of have tweaked services from regular editors. I love teaching craft. I know we'll talk about that in a little bit. So I like to kind of handhold some of my writers. So some of them will wait for the developmental edits completely. When the book is done, I'll see you in, 4 to 8 weeks. And then they read it all, and then hopefully they can interpret everything and make edits where needed. Others, we meet weekly. So there'll be a Zoom call every week. They get that week's edits, plus my my page of write-ups of big picture items. So they get inline edits and then big picture items. And then in that call, we'll talk about, okay, what did you see? Now, my one caveat is they can't tell me future things because I don't want to know in advance. I like to read cold. But then they can say, you mentioned bringing in showing and telling, and I don't quite know how to do that. So then I can do a little mini lesson with them right there, and hopefully they get it by the end of that. So,
Good.
yeah.
And so this is your company, Much Ado About Writing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And on your website for your company, I was struck by just the idea that trying to find a balance between, as writers, we all know the solitude, right? Mm-hmm. But you're trying to find a balance between, you said, a carryover from a great writing conference where you just don't want it to end. The how the social aspect, and even if it's just kind of one-on-one, me as a writer, you a developmental editor, or group or writing groups or whatever, the social aspect in kind of as a complement to the individual part. Can you talk about the social side of it and how it's worked not only for you as a writer, but also you as kind of leading that social side of it?
Yes. So I love the group. This is what I could talk about for the next 4 hours.
Oh, good.
Talk fast. Time to get back. So this, the writing group, exactly what you said. So if you go to a conference, you make friends there, right? And you're kind of in this chummy world. Hey, we buddied up because we were in the same workshop together. Oh, now it's lunchtime and we're chit-chatting. And what are you working on? Oh, I'm working on this. Oh, you're getting ready to pitch that agent, and so on and so forth. And you're just like, oh, I'm in my world. And then break and we all leave the conference.
Yes.
And then it's like, well, we swapped email addresses, but I don't know what to reach out to you for. Like, am I now your leader telling you, let's read an article? So it's kind of nice to just stay at the conference. So myself and my business partner, Valerie, we kind of built where, the jammies of your own home, because everything's online. You come to workshops, you come to writing sprints. We do have author mingle time or writer mingle times where we just get to chit chat as if we were at lunch. We do celebrations. We have guest speakers, and we have game night. Yeah. So we have interactive workshops because as an editor, I'll give people feedback. And then sometimes their biggest question is, I don't know how to implement the feedback. Like, I know what show and tell is, but I don't actually now know how to do it in my work. I can see it in your work and in that published work, but I don't know how to do it in my work. So we have game night where we work with that, and then we have an editing call where, okay, you guys kind of were working on this, so we're going to choose 3 people who submitted to us. We're looking for just one thing because the whole month is just wrapped around one topic. So I don't know why I'm on show and tell today. But let's pretend that was the whole month. We would have done a teaching call, guest speakers talk about it, game night, and now it's editing night. So you've had fun time working with it, meeting up with others in the group. But yeah, our members, they're like, I have learned more in your group than any conference, that they had attended. So I was like, oh, that's really nice. And the price for what you get in 1 month really is like how many conferences can you physically go to? There's
Sure.
hotel
Yeah.
involved, there's restaurants
Right.
involved. You know, maybe you can do it once a year because it's a really fun thing to do, but does once a year always get you everything you want? You know, because sometimes it is like, gosh, we really connected. I wish we could hang out more. But like I said, which one of us says, let's read this article or whatever? It's easier to be like, well, Kate and Valerie said, read this, check out this. Now have a talk about it. So, yeah.
So it's sort of like a collective or a cooperative where they kind of come together. And so are they authors that are going to try to get a publisher, or are they planning on publishing independently, you know, an indie publisher?
We have a little of everything. So we do have, we just celebrated 2 authors last week because they just got published, and one book came out in March and another one just came out last week. So we got to celebrate their releases. We have others who are writing for the traditional market, and then others who are like, I think I do just want to self-publish this and see where that leads them. So a little bit of everything.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
And so, and there's a website. How would they get in contact with you?
So you guys can come to muchadoaboutwriting.com, and hopefully everything is there. So yes, so if you're interested in editing services, or if you're interested in joining the group, or if you just want to find out more, we don't mind emailing you some answers to questions, and sometimes we've set up Zoom calls because, you know, sometimes it's harder to go back and forth with an email and you just want to get your questions answered. But yes, thank you.
So it sounds like that it's some authors that want to be published, you know, so you're trying to avoid some obstacles where they submit their work and then the editor there doesn't stop. Oh, nope, you know, I'm stuck there, so I'm just going to I'm pushing it off the slush pile. Or those other self-published writers where, you know, you have to have the objectivity of somebody else looking at it and making sure that actually an engaging story is happening.
Yeah.
Right?
So both directions would be engaging stories, but sometimes it's timing. You know, sometimes an agent or a publishing house is looking for a certain thing at a certain time. Others, they might be the perfect fit for you, but they already have a book very similar, and then you would become their competition for their own author at their own house, and so they would have to decline you. So your book is still super cool, would gain awesome traction, but there's a lot of luck in the industry, which is why I think self-publishing can be such a beautiful option. Just a quick nod towards writing for Kidlit. I think self-publishing can be a little bit more of a challenge because we have gatekeepers. We have librarians who are going to vet if this is an appropriate book for a certain age, because no subject is off limit, even for picture books. It is all in how you deliver the subject. You know, like I have books for the conference that are on the topic of World War II, picture book through YA. So the topics are acceptable for children, just of course, how are you representing that information? So you want librarians to vet that. You want someone who has the knowledge. You want school teachers to vet for that. And you want parents to be able to say, yes, I do think this is okay. So that can be a little harder because without those gatekeepers, your picture book or middle grade book or YA book might not get into the right publications to get noticed. Like, I don't know what they're called, the names of them, maybe Fulger or something like that.
Ingram?
They're for self-publishing, but the librarians have catalogs that they can order books from. So whether they're school librarians or, So not that you can't do it, but it can be a little more challenging to get your book widely known. Yeah.
Good.
Is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to let them know about?
I don't know. I'll see you at Lakefly if you're in the area.
Kate Penndorf.
Thank you.
It's been
so
a
much.
real
you.
pleasure.
Yeah,
Much
this is
Ado About
fun.
Writing. Everybody should check that out. And thank you so much for being with us today on
Author Showcase of Oshkosh. And if you have any comments or just like to tell us something, Oshkosh, authorshowcase@gmail.com. We have a YouTube channel, same name. Check it out. Check out our local authors that we're trying to spread the word about. So thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Author Showcase of Oshkosh with your hosts, Dixie Joe Jarko, Bill Gillard, and Thomas Cannon. We'd love to hear from you, whether you're interested in being a guest on the show, have a question, or want to share your thoughts. Please reach out to us on social media or via email at oshkoshauthorshowcase@gmail.com.